Thank you so much. And actually, what a great segue in the last slide on our previous presenter about collaboration and culture, because it is so important in where we're headed and what we absolutely need to do for the future. So I'm Louise Pearce, and I'm the Global Head of Mining and Metals for ERM, which is a big global consultancy that we focus on the sustainability ESG space. But before I begin, I'm going to turn it over to Nevinia to do a land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. On behalf of all of us on the panel, we'd like to recognise and acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of this beautiful country where we're meeting today, and pay our respects to their elders and their future leaders as well. We are very blessed to be on their country. It is an amazing place and they have so much to teach us. They're custodians of not only the land, the waterways, but also their storylines that go back thousands of years. So thank you for allowing us to come together today on your country. And I pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and other First Nations people that may be in the room today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nevinia. So earlier this year, I had an opportunity to meet with some senior leaders from South Africa. And my friend Moses spoke about the traditional greeting of his people, Sawubona. And this means, I see you. And the response to that greeting is, I am here. And so I'm going to adopt this for our panel today because it's a really powerful way to bring into the room all the various perspectives that we have around the collaboration and culture topic. They're not the same. And everyone has different ideas and everyone needs to have a voice if we're really going to get to where we want to go. But I just want to let everyone that I see you and I'm seeking to understand you all. And our panel today is the role of culture and collaboration in driving mining innovation for tomorrow. We're actually going to reflect on the cultural changes the mining community is embracing and maybe perhaps needs to embrace further, and the collaboration required for all industry, not just our mining industry, to enable the non-technical and the technical innovation needed to meet the needs of today and those of the future. So with Jan, James, Sam, and Nevinia, I'm going to turn over and start to ask some questions. So hopefully have some fun. So James, let me start with you. So what challenges and opportunities do you see within the mining industry that may contribute positively or negatively to innovation?
Well, thanks very much, Louise. It was really interesting just hearing the tail end of the last talk with Mark, the speaker, and his focus right at the tail end there on culture. And I think changing culture is one of the biggest challenges and also one of the biggest opportunities in terms of generating value through innovation, collaboration, and ultimately innovation. And I think it's really important to recognise that cultural change is a deliberate thing. And I'll just briefly take a trip down memory lane and talk about what I observed through the mining industry from the start of my career in 1985, or just by way of context, all of my perspectives are from the perspective of a geologist, so upstream in mineral exploration, mine geology, and now over the last 15 years in government, geoscience. But what I observed back in 1985 is mining was a real bloke's world, and there were pornographic calendars on office walls and images all over the place. It was competitive, and I personally felt I really had to toughen up. I was a naive 23-year-old or something, and I didn't know enough to challenge it. I just thought, wow, this must be how the world is. Fast forward 10 years to the 90s, I'd taken a bit of a break out to do some study, and one of the things that I really observed had changed was partly that culture vis-a-vis objectification of women, but also safety. I really wanted to touch on what we all probably have lived through in the change in safety practice in the mining industry. And through the 90s in particular, there was a massive focus on improving safety, and it dramatically lowered injuries and thankfully fatalities. But it was through a very deliberate focus on safety culture and developing a culture. So I'm saying that by way of articulating that a deliberate focus on culture can reap rewards, and I think now it's time to focus on psychosocial safety. The reason I say that is if we create an environment where people feel safe, feel welcome, feel valued, they're going to be an environment where they can thrive. That creates an openness to communication and therefore collaboration. And when you get that diversity of views, innovation will follow. And we can do innovation as a solo agent for so long in a little cubicle locked away, but at that point you run out of ideas and you've got to have other people's ideas. So I think it's the cultural piece and a deliberate focus.
Very good. And I'm glad the 90s brought us something more than those aerobics costumes. So it's very good to hear that we've been on this journey for a while. So I'm going to turn over to Nevinia now. And Nevinia, can you share examples that have successfully transformed your organization and what were the key drivers behind that transformation?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. I guess Thiess is, like most companies, continually evolving and transforming. So our journey of transformation never really ends. But we have recently seen our business decentralise. So Thiess, for those that may not know anything about us, we're a global mining contractor. We have operations in various countries throughout Australia, the Asia and Indonesia, Mongolia, and the Americas, Chile, and the US, and continually looking to evolve our global presence. And not too long ago, we were really operating under a centrally governed and controlled operating model. And recently, we've moved to a more regionally led model. And the opportunity that creates for us is to really be able to tap into some of the amazing technical and digital skill sets in particular that we have in our other jurisdictions. And what we're seeing, what Thiess is aiming to achieve over the next 2 to 3 years is to really start to optimise our performance through tapping into those skill sets. But that requires a little bit of courage and trust and curiosity in the way that we engage and work with our colleagues in those other jurisdictions. And that goes both ways. So in order to tap into that diversity of thought that James spoke to, we really need to create that space to stop, be curious, listen, create an opportunity for our colleagues to share different insights, different experience. But part of that as well is looking to bring in other skill sets from other industries into our business. As we all know, it's a tough talent market at the moment for our industry, and we need to continually be seeking out people from other sectors and have the skill sets we need, and that involves continuous learning, which I think is a part of that cultural shift as well. It requires patience and time, something the industry is not good at. We want to move fast, we want to be agile and quick and efficient in our production. And in our processing. So it's a challenge for our industry to stop and allow time for diversity of thought and to collaborate effectively to create that opportunity for innovation to really succeed.
Thank you. And the curiosity needed and the trust needed to embrace that diversity, absolutely critical. Jan, I'm coming to you next. How can organizations foster that culture, like really to get right at the challenges we're facing, say whether they're technical or non-technical? What can be done?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thanks for giving me that one. Just for a bit of context first, Hatch is a global strategy, engineering, construction company. We operate everywhere in the world where there's mining, pretty much. And myself, I'm someone that's just very passionate about the mining industry and making it a better place. So that this my context to my remarks. Maybe kind of additive to what we've already heard. I'd like to focus on purpose and the need for an agreed and aligned purpose in what we're trying to achieve. I think that starts, and that's worked well for us at Hatch, to align ourselves not so much around department, but around what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the key challenge? And it might be a big, wicked problem, but you're going to coalesce around that. And that high level of thinking we've found helps us to then, naturally you end up with inclusiveness and diversity, because if you're focused not on my department and my silo, but on my challenge is tailings. And how do I make less of it? Now, you're naturally going to try and include a diversity of thought, as many possible angles on that problem as possible. A second organizational thing that we find very valuable is a flat organization. Hierarchy gets in the way of driving faster and collaborating. So creating a field where people are valued for the ideas they bring, and not their rank or their position on a totem pole is highly valuable. And of course, the diversity of teams, and that, James, you started with gender. There's so many dimensions of diversity, I think, that are important to bring to challenges. Just an example, I know examples are useful. I think one of the really exciting ones that is working well in our company, but also in the industry, is the thinking about tailings. When you really think about it, the industry as a whole has recognized it's a problem. It's a wicked problem. There's lots of angles to it. We've been able to coalesce, and through the leadership of a couple of organizations, ICMM one of them, but there's many, we've been able to articulate in a clear vision statement, what is it we're trying to do? We're trying to minimize or eliminate tailings, no waste environment, right? Then we've been able to be inclusive. It's been wonderful to see the industry understand that challenge, and then all the different technology providers in this hall are out there contributing in some way additively in a collaborative way to the tailings challenge. And the diversity of thought has been fantastic. And we're seeing it now. We're finally, I think, into the fast part of solving the tailings challenge after, as usual, a couple of years of understanding the challenge and creating alignment in the industry.
Can I just supplement
Absolutely.
that? Because I think Jan gave some great examples of how you can foster that culture, but I think another element of it is it's really important to just have the leadership on the issue, and leaders actually have to lead and say things out loud and be explicit about it, because that's when people unequivocally know that they have the support from the top to do to participate in these cultural changes, rather than simply set a framework and essentially leave it to purely opt in. It's genuinely led by leaders at all levels.
Thanks for the final on there, James. I think it's true. I mean, going back to Jan, your wicked problem and sort of that design thinking approach, which levels the playing field, is so important. And a great segue into my question for you, Sam. So and with the leadership. So what are the key indicators of an organizational culture that is conducive to innovation, and what can the leaders actually do? What are those concrete steps?
So I think the answer to this question is really a summary of all of these of this input, and you know, we had a discussion before this session about, you know, how innovative is innovation? You know, is it big? Is it little? Who does it? You know, and it actually hinges around leadership and what leaders are able to, I guess, you know, create, or the environment that leaders are able to create in their teams. We're asking a lot in 2023 and going forward of leaders. You know, it's looking at how they communicate, what kind of autonomy and space they give people within their teams to do, and that's not always easy as a leader. You know, we've had leaders that have been very, I guess, task-focused and very specific about the goals and the aims that they're trying to achieve, and to give people the freedom to be able to be a little off-piste in terms of their thinking, to come to a different point of view. Sometimes that takes a bit of time, and we tend to want to get to the answer quickly. So giving people the space and actually having people have the time to think is not a luxury. There has to be, I think, you have to see within these teams some clarity of boundaries too. People get really frustrated when you say that they can be innovative and then you bring them back in within a, you know, a kind of a different sort of framework. And I think we've talked about trust and transparency as well. You know, we talk about psychological safety. You know, it is a matter of trust that people are able to bring ideas to the table, not feel foolish if that's not exactly the thing that's going to be the thing that works. They have to feel safe that if they fail, they'll be supported, and that, you know, their diverse thoughts and input will be respected. I would touch on purpose. You know, innovation without a purpose is just an aimless path. So, you know, really focusing around what is our organisational purpose, what is our departmental purpose, and what kinds of interesting thinking get us there is really key to not having people just meander around and be frustrated by the fact that they are not able to enact the things that they want to enact. And then collaboration. Collaboration's fabulous, and it is really one of those key things that drives innovation, but collaboration, again, without some support and collaboration without some individual recognition. You know, humans and individuals are inherently, I guess, needing some form of recognition when their idea is good. And so wonderful for team recognition, but, you know, certainly for individuals, there has to be something in it for them. And then the other thing I think that really is key is you've got to fund it. You know, whether you fund it with time, giving people time, or the funds to actually run different programs within an organisation. But that time and space and support is really, you know, that's what says, and when you can see that in an organisation, that says you're really serious.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so true. And then, so I'm just going to pull us back a little bit here, because I think we've made tremendous progress. When I look at the diversity in this room and the diversity out there on the floor or in the core shack, it's amazing. And also, we don't have the protesters we might have had at this event a few years ago. So maybe the industry is doing a little bit better, but in terms of reputation, but still, there's still challenges. How do we bring that collaboration beyond? And I'm coming to you first, James, on this one, but how do we bring that collaboration beyond this room, beyond the people in and around the media? How do we get to the institutions, to government agencies and beyond? And then, Nevinia, I'm going to come to you next to ask for how do we get to underrepresented groups and more marginalized people. But James first.
Oh, that's a big question. It's a societal awareness raising, really, that this sector is part of the solution, as opposed to, you know, a rapacious industry that's only interested in money. We're actually providing commodities because they're needed, and they're needed for a specific purpose that the rest of the globe and the society in large believe in. So the decarbonisation agenda is a perfect opportunity to rehabilitate the image of this sector, and indeed speak to young folks who you're keen to draw into the sector and say, if you want to be part of the solution, take a look at mining and metalliferous mining for, you know, producing the resources we need for renewables and decarbonisation. It's an education piece that I think can be done in part. We've all got a role to play. It can be done in part by peak bodies. It can be done by individual companies. It can be done by us in my organisation in government. I think it's a collective effort that is what we need.
Can I jump into? I think we have to show them too that, you know, innovation is not just about, you know, hard pieces of kit and tailings dams. And, you know, that as an industry, we have done some really innovative things around paid parental leave and the kinds of health and wellbeing programs that we've got happening within the sector. And, you know, I think that the technical side of it is fabulous from an innovation, and that is really great, but it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, and I think just leading on to what both James and Sam have said is that it goes beyond just the technical mindset or the subject matter experts that we have within our business. It also goes out to our stakeholders outside of our business as well. So those community stakeholders, you know, I think one critical point for leadership is to ensure that not just the right people are in the room, but a broad array of subject matter experts sit in on conversations when you're trying to innovate. So you might not necessarily consider somebody, for example, who works in my space in terms of community social performance more broadly to sit in on a technical conversation, but where the opportunity lies is to perhaps have some thinking around, is there an external stakeholder that could potentially support the outcomes and have that intersection from an ESG perspective and achieve some of those ESG objectives we're all putting a lot of resources and time into. So an example of, and that's not always easy, and I think that creating that space and time to enable that is really important. So an example I have, we had a long-term client in South Australia where we worked, had full open mine pit operations in an alliance model with our client. That mine came to an end, and the open pit mine reached its end of life, and the biggest impact that was identified by the client was the social impact on the local traditional owners, because it was a primarily Aboriginal community. And they worked with Thiess to understand, well, how can we mitigate that impact? How can we reduce the amount of risk that had for those communities? And although it wasn't our core business and it wasn't the thing that we looked to do every day, what we did was we formed a partnership with the traditional owners who had no capabilities at all to deliver the run of mine and ore rehandling for 6 years. And, it's a low-cost job for Thiess. It's small, but the impact for those local traditional owner groups has been significant. So they've gone from having no commercial capabilities in that space to now being able reaching a stage where they're going to take over the contract from Thiess and represent 70% of our workforce and building up their assets as well. So the impact for Thiess was actually super challenging. We had to, move from having a leadership team who weren't accustomed to working with such a large Indigenous population of employees that had commitments from a cultural perspective that sometimes impacted on their ability to come to work. And we had to work collaboratively with that traditional owner group to work through those challenges, to talk them out, to understand and have an equal understanding around how do we mitigate, how do we fix and address those concerns for the benefits of both organisations. And, we had to create that space. Our leaders had to lead from both respective organisations, from the community and from Thiess. And there are days when our project leadership team were just like, this is not working, it's hard, it's too hard. But they pushed through, and it was through their leadership that we now ended up having a project that was actually one of our most profitable and most productive. And we've had a positive impact on that community long after we will leave and that mine finishes for Thiess.
Amazing story, great case study, and that value comes from so many different levels. It's not just financial value or competitive edge, it is true lasting value. It's a great story. Jen, coming across you again is in terms of going right back to the competition. We heard originally from James about what it was like in the 90s, and so you didn't share anything except for maybe some dodgy pictures on your walls. But so what is that? What does collaboration mean for IP and for for firms who are trying to compete? Where can we collaborate and where can't we? And what does that mean?
Yeah, no, I love that topic. Thank you, Louise. So first of all, the biggest competitive advantage every company in the room has is ability to collaborate, innovate, and move fast, right? It's the culture that enables that is by far the biggest competitive advantage. The IP, the secrecy, the control, yes, that has its place in its time, but that's inferior to the importance of the culture that drives. If you can stay faster and more innovative than anyone else in the landscape, you're going to do very, very well. So that kind of nice segue from the discussion just now. More so specifically on IP and secrecy, I think we have to think differently about that. I know that this is a regular discussion in many of our meetings, I'm sure, and everyone else's as well. And we know that the most important thing for the industry and for our individual companies is to move fast, at speed, and with scale. And to achieve that, you really need to collaborate. There's a point where it becomes competitive, and yes, you go off on your own, but that initial collaboration is important. I'll also say that there are some industry-level challenges that I think we've always collaborated very well on, and there may be a model for how it should work more broadly. The industry has always collaborated brilliantly, I think, on safety. Today, on cybersecurity, I think it's very clear to everybody, safety and cybersecurity, we share that with each other, and we make the industry safer. And similarly, tailings and the tailings challenges is something we have to solve for the industry. So that collaboration is quite good. For the more technical challenges, though, I really think that there's some urgent challenges that need to be solved. Electrification, decarbonization, less tailings, less waste, better recycling. At a pre-commercial level, I think collaboration in forums guided through different not-for-profit sometimes groups or for-profit groups that pull in multiple partners that take advantage of different expertise makes sense. We heard just in the talk before how Pearce and ABB were working together on the trucks. There's much bigger and broader examples of that. I see Carl's here from CMIC in Canada. He's one of those centers that pulls together multiple stakeholders and chews on a challenge until we solve it. I think that's the way to go, to get something through that pre-commercial hump. And then, of course, parties can go their own ways and develop as makes sense for their specific operation. But the industry desperately needs that. We have to go much faster and at scale.
And I think everything's resonating. And I was just, one of the things we talk about, we sometimes talk topic by topic, how do we solve this and that? But what I'm hearing is a lot of, fundamentally what society's asking us for is that to integrate the ESG into everything we do and not just do ESG next year or something like that. And I think it's, one of the things that a lot of the young folks on our team are challenging. They might be geochemists or they might be doing, working on ore body knowledge, but bringing in those other factors into the traditional block metal method for mining and saying, is that really the best way to do it? And can we bring this right back up such as that we can start to design and just completely bypass at the very beginning. So I'm coming to you, Sam, for thinking about that.
Well, I was just going to say, if you think about the students that we've got coming through and coming from universities, they don't think discipline by discipline anymore. And that's not how they're taught. So if you want them to be truly innovative within an organisation, you've actually got to give them more than just a discipline-specific problem. And what we've tended to do is just say, focus on that thing. So, in a world of data everywhere and the internet and the way they've learned, we've got this amazing resource of people who think incredibly, most of them, some of them don't, incredibly laterally, that we can put onto these problems in a way that we probably didn't learn to think when we were at university.
Yeah, it's true. And I learned so much from my nieces, my nephews, the kids. They challenge. And we had a global partner meeting earlier in the US earlier this year. And it was in Florida and we have family in Florida. So we're at the house and my nephew said, would you like to work with me today? We're both working from home in the house. And so we sat beside each other on the laptop, which is, I don't know, I often work from home now, even in the city, and I'm from Toronto. But he's like, what are you writing? Let me write that for you in ChatGPT. Yeah, it's like, I think I'm not allowed. But anyways, by the end of, a couple of hours, we had a much better, presentation. I was doing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging presentation, and it was so much better. And it was my nephew and I and a little bit of ChatGPT, but it's going. But I think that just embracing complete differences is going. And I think we have to challenge this way. We do things a certain way. We've always done things a certain way. We've been around a while, but very well said. Who wants to pile onto that next? Because I think, James here. Yeah.
I just wanted to give an example of an example that was surprising to me at the time around collaboration in what had been a competitive sector. And again, it's an exploration example, but back in, again, the 90s, I was working in the Eastern Goldfields near Kalgoorlie, that sort of area. And there was a whole mass consolidation of companies, a lot of juniors merging, buying each other out and then getting consumed by mid-tiers and some of them getting consumed by larger companies. But the ultimate impact was it got to the point where all of the ground, the exploration ground over quite an extensive tract in the Kambalda through to Kalgoorlie region and north from Kalgoorlie, was held by a small number of bigger players. And it became apparent that it was no longer in their interest to just be secret. And we actually started to meet as geologists and talk about our various exploration models because the ground was held, right? You had the asset. And new discoveries came out of it, but because we were finding things that broke our own little local paradigm, where we were at St Ives, for example, and realising that, hey, they're discovering gold in this sort of different host rock. Maybe we should check out our package of that host rock, and discoveries were made. And that was collaboration in an area that previously had been absolutely competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. I'm sure we've all got examples. So let me go back now just a little bit more. So just talking to that culture, to allowing people the voice. We talked about safety and the progress made on safety in the world in the 90s and in the sector and specifically. But now, coming through a pandemic and embracing a different set of people, there's a lot of psychosocial pressure. there's a lot of demand. There's the whole world is open. You tend to be on 24/7. Maybe Sam, I'll come to you, and then Nevinia. But how do we respond to that? What's our challenge now? I mean, the safety journey didn't end in 1999, and does it look different now?
I think it looks different because we think differently about it. I think we don't apply a strictly operations perspective anymore, and I think the psychosocial element to safety was always there. When I first came into the industry, I remember people talking to me about you need to check if the person's got their mind on the job, was what people would say. And, that's the precursor to what else is going on in their life that could actually be affecting the way they're working in that day. And COVID taught us a lot too. I mean, it was a terrible period of time, but what a wonderful gift in terms of actually having us collaborate and think really fast about really complex problems, and things that were not just about mining per se, but obviously were inherently affecting what we did and how we operated. So I think it has changed. I think it's got a long way to go though, because I think we're breaking down the stigma of psychosocial safety and mental health, but I sometimes think that could be just really, it's very PC to not be worried about that, but at the same time, I think we've got a way to go in terms of really embedding that in terms of how we work. We did a really interesting project in Western Australia. We worked with some of our team worked on the Mars project, was about mental health and respect. And that was a really interesting collaboration where 20 mining companies came together and shared best practice, and brought it all together in 3 guidebooks and working documents. And one of the things that was fabulous about that, and from a safety point of view, is whilst we are resourced be able to do some of this work, it actually was able to be shared through the industry. So it took the safety best practice element even to the next level. So where are we at? What do we do? It's that kind of collaboration that I think will really make a difference to where we go with psychosocial safety, and then I think there'll be flow-ons for other areas.
Yeah, no, we're good, but Nevinia, exactly, and maybe also extended to how do you make that environment better for Indigenous peoples and other marginalised groups as well.
Yeah, I think I might actually just talk about women and their experience in the industry, actually. I think a lot of what came out of Western Australia over the past couple of years, particularly, and more broadly across our industry, not just in Australia, but globally, is that women are having a very different experience. So despite good policy, and there's improved policy, and despite training, we are still struggling to create a workplace where women can thrive, where they do feel safe, psychologically safe. And that's not necessarily just around the physical element of safety in terms of assault. Some of it's microaggression. It's the everyday behaviours of what we accept at the meeting tables, at the way that our sites are established, the accommodation, the safety element that's there for women. I think the industry is doing its best in terms of advocating for change, but we need to continue to take action. It can't just be advocacy, it can't just be policy. And that's each and every one of us. It is led by leaders, and that comment's been made by some of my fellow panellists. But it's not just leadership at the top levels. It's not just our executive. It's leaders at supervisory level, at a superintendent level, who are really driving the workplace culture at a site. And they need the capacity and the resources, the training, to understand what does that actually mean in practice, and provide them with the adequate tools to creating respectful workplaces. A simple, policy does not fix that issue, and women in particular will only survive and succeed in our industry if that change happens in our behaviours. And it's absolutely critical. If we want diversity of thought and we want enablement for women to grow and succeed in this industry, we need to have more representation at a leadership level, at all layers of leadership, and eventually we'll start to see a shift in the behaviours and the change that will create a better culture for all of us, and also a more collaborative culture. The International Labour Organisation conducted a survey, a global survey in 2018 that spoke around specifically gender diversity and the benefits that that has for industry, not just our industry, but all. 13,000 organisations responded to that survey, and 68% of them said that gender diversity creates an improved opportunity for their business by 58% to innovate. And if, 13,000 global organisations are seeing that and understanding it, our industry will only lag if we don't continue to drive and focus on creating a more respectful workplace for women.
Can I pile onto that one? Thank you for starting there. This is a huge topic. Now, talking about enablers for innovation, creativity, collaboration, it comes down to diversity and inclusion, and the gender angle of that is so important. We've been obsessing on that topic for the last couple of years, and I think making great strides. A simple indicator that you can use in your own companies or meetings is, who is not getting a voice in this meeting, who is not being heard, who is being interrupted, who is not having a chance to, who's not being asked or invited into a discussion, right? I came to the conclusion that this gender diversity topic is actually a man issue. And I want to talk to the men in the room, please. There are things that happen when you're growing up as a man that unintentionally and unknowingly create unconscious biases. And being aware of that, it makes such a difference to being able to be inclusive in the workplace. If you really look back and think, the level of interruption, the level of undermining, the level of respect that happens when you start to really think through, would I do the same thing if this was a man or a woman, or flipping it, makes a huge difference in the way the micro interactions that you spoke about, Narendra, how that happens. Getting that base culture right, and I'm a big advocate that meetings are the way to do that. But that base culture of inclusiveness, making sure everybody has a voice, that nobody is interrupted, nobody is undermined, nobody is looked down upon. They have an equal ability to add. That creates psychosocial safety, yes, but it also creates space for women and other diverse groups to contribute to problems. And as it rolls up, as we've been saying, that ultimately leads to much better ideas, much better productivity, and much better collaboration.
Yeah, thanks. And just to extend beyond the gender to neurodiverse thought is one of our colleagues a couple of weeks ago shared with me his daughter, who's neurodiverse, was learning to drive and passing a driving test, and he's really opened his eyes to not everyone sees the signals in the room, the visual signs, the recognition, the knowledge. It comes down to what exactly, you've got to give that time, and especially when we spend a lot less time face to face, a lot less time in people. If you're driving and you're sitting in your car, you don't really know what that other person's going to do or what that pedestrian's going to do. So it's just think a little bit, not the whole world does not look and think like us. I think that matters a big difference. I'm going to go quickly through the panelists. I need one sentence for takeaway for the audience, and I'll go right to the end and we'll come back this way. So go ahead. Yeah.
Look, I think I'm recognizing unconscious bias and creating inclusivity is the key enabler for so much.
Great. Nevinia.
Yeah, I think what I started with is just be comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes, and be curious to learn from others and hear others' perspectives.
And mine would be culture is the way we do things, or is the way we do things around here. So make sure the culture's right, so you're doing the right things.
Mine would be help people solve a real problem, or help them solve somebody else's real problem.
Fantastic. It's really good. And I don't know if you've ever dropped by the Year-End booth, but we created a concept about 7 years ago called the mind we all want to see. And it's just, we keep building on it. And it's just, with stakeholders around the world and inputs like this, so important. But I think we really need to aspire to get to a place as an industry where we play a leading role in the transition to carbon. We're recognized, to a low carbon economy. We're recognized for our contribution to the circular economy, but also to society. And I think that we're on this journey, but we've got a long way to go. And thank you, everyone. It's been a great thing. My panelists, it's been a lot of fun. I'd love to maybe do this again somewhere else sometime. But it's been fun. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise.